All right, so this is our continuation of our light unit here. This is a pretty cool picture. This is actually from the International Space Station, and they do a lot of experiments with water in zero gravity, and you can actually see a really cool shot here of this water bubble that has another little bubble of water inside of it right there, and you can see how the light of this guy's face, the image of this guy's face is upside down here and right side up here. Pretty cool. We'll talk about why that happens. Energy. Don't forget to take notes on the red slides. You should have the notes handouts to go with this. And don't forget to look for the owl and summarize what you learned at the end. So I want to start off by getting something straight here. We're going to talk about some things about how light is bent and things like that. And we talked about reflection in the last homework assignment. And I just wanted you to take a look at this picture. This is a picture of a pond with a stick in it. And I want you to notice that you can see the bottom of the pond. You can see the stick in the pond, and it kind of appears to be bent. And we'll talk about that. And you can also see the reflection of the stick as well. And I just want you to make sure that you know that the difference between reflection and what we're going to be talking about today, which is refraction, and the idea that you guys already know that you can't see through a mirror, and that light does not go through a mirror, light bounces off of a mirror, and that you already know is reflection. So when we're talking about lenses, like what we're going to talk about now, and glass and water and things like that, that light goes through, that's light going through it. And I think you already understand that too, because you've seen people, you either wear glasses yourself or you've seen people with glasses, and you understand this idea that light goes through it. So please try to remember, please try to kind of keep these two ideas separate. Mirrors reflect light, which means it bounces off. What we're going to be talking about today is when light goes through something and it gets refracted. In your last notes, we talked about reflection and how light bounces off of things. And again, this is like talking about a mirror. It's also talking about all the sort of different objects like your desk and your wall and things like that, where light reflects off of that as well. Now we're going to be talking about refraction, and this is light actually going through something. So obviously you can see through this glass and you can see through the water, but the light is kind of being bent here. We can tell that because there's something funny going on right here where the pencil seems to be kind of broken there, but we know it's not. It's just sort of a trick of the light. So refraction is when light gets bent when moving through different mediums. And you guys should know what the word medium means by now. That is the thing that the light is going through here. So in this case, it's kind of going through air, and then it's going through the glass and through the water. And when that happens, the light kind of gets bent like that. So the reason why this happens, here's a good analogy for you. It's kind of like a marching band going around a corner. In order for a marching band to go around the corner, these guys over here have to walk a bit faster than these guys here because they have a longer distance to go. And in order to keep this line nice and straight, these guys have to walk a bit faster on the outside here. They have to march a bit faster. These guys have to march a bit slower to get around this corner and keep their line straight. Well, same thing happens when a wave of light goes from one medium to another, and maybe that second medium slows the wave down a little bit. But notice these waves of light here kind of coming in an angle, and once they hit this second medium here, they get slowed down a little bit, kind of like if the marching band got into some muddy grass or something like that and slowed them down. So these guys start getting slowed down first, but these guys are still kind of moving along nice and quick. But then this guy gets into the muddy grass here or into our second medium like glass or water or something like that, and he gets slowed down a little bit. So eventually this wave, which was heading in this direction, once it gets into this new medium, is now heading in this direction. So it gets bent a little bit. And that's basically what's happening when you see light going from air to glass or air to water. And so examples of that would be, again, looking at a straw in a glass of water, or looking at your legs through a swimming pool, or looking at the world around you through eyeglasses, or using a magnifying glass, or any of those different types of things. So Isaac Newton was one of the first people to figure out that this idea that of refracting light, and specifically refracting light using a prism. Now, okay, so this is an interesting idea. We've already talked about the idea that white light is made up of all the colors of the rainbow, but why is it that they get spread out and kind of separated into their different colors when they go through this? So we need to start talking about lenses. Again, kind of keep these things straight, and it shouldn't be too difficult, I think, because you already know a lot of this stuff. And that is that when we're talking about reflection, we're mainly talking about mirrors, and sometimes we're also talking about kind of all the other things around us that we see. When we're talking about refraction, we're talking about lenses. So keep those straight. Reflection goes with mirrors, refraction goes with lenses. So a lens is a transparent optical device used to converge or diverge transmitted light. In other words, it's something that does refraction. That's a lot of really big words there, but you guys know what transparent means, right? See-through. An optical device is just kind of something that does something to light, and it's used to converge or diverge transmitted light. And we're going to talk about that in a second if you don't know what that means. But here's a lot of examples of this. Here's a contact lens, right? So obviously that's a lens. Here's a lens here, and you can kind of see how it's distorting the light when you look through it. Some magnifying glasses, lens in a camera, and there's actually one more, and that's right here. Yeah, you have a built-in lens in your body. Two of them, actually. You have lenses in your eyes that help you focus the light to the back of your eyes. Okay, so which one is diverging light and which one is converging light? Well, this one here is diverging light. That means they are going away from each other. That's what diverging means. Okay? This guy here is converging light. That means they're coming together. And you may kind of remember this from when we talked about convex and concave mirrors. So we're going to have to kind of compare and contrast these things, but both mirrors and lenses make the light either converge or diverge. We just got to figure out which one does which, and we'll talk more about that. One thing to really notice here, though, is that anytime you have converging light, a key part of that is the fact that you have a focal point there. So let's try to draw some of this. So make sure, once again, that you do these drawings really, really carefully. That's going to be very important because you're going to have to do this later. So here's our convex lens with converging light rays, and here is our concave lens with diverging light rays. So, which one's converging? That one. Which one's, and that one is convex. This one is concave. That one is converging, and that one is diverging. So, draw that picture there. You might want to pause the video now and draw all of that stuff. Now, this is something that might be kind of familiar to some of you that wear glasses. So the idea of wearing glasses is that you have to, the basic idea is in order for you to see a focused image, you have to have the light focus that focal point right on the back of your eye here. That's a really important part. That's kind of like the movie screen in your eye. That's where all of the light kind of comes together. So we need that to be focused there. Now, if somebody's lens on their eye, this is where your lens would be on your eye, if that's not shaped quite right, then sometimes you can get a focal point that's right here, not on the back of your eye. And so once it gets to the back of your eye, you can see it's kind of out of focus there. So some of you guys might have concave lenses that kind of spread that out a bit and then make it so that it gets to the back of your eye. Some of you might have convex lenses because maybe your focal point is back here somewhere and you need to shorten it. So if you wear glasses, take a look at them right now and kind of see if they're concave or convex. All right. So this is another word that you should be familiar with, diffraction. This is the bending when it goes through an opening or around a corner. And we talked about this in sound. In sound, it happens a lot In light, it happens a little bit. It doesn't happen very much. It's not real noticeable, but it still does happen. This happens with all waves, actually, but it doesn't happen very much with light. That has to do with the wavelength of light and the fact that the wavelength is very short in comparison to the wavelengths of sound waves. But basically, it still happens just to a lesser extent. So a couple examples of where you might see diffraction happening with light. This is something that you may have seen before, and specifically I want you to kind of focus on that part there and see how the light looks like it's actually kind of going right through the tree there. Well, that's because as it goes around that tree limb, it's kind of bending around the corner a little bit, and it's kind of bending around the corner on this side a little bit. And that's what makes that happen. That is diffraction, like this here. See, it's going around, and then it spreads out as it goes around and kind of comes together here. Another example of this that you're going to need to know is the idea of shadows. When the light comes down on something like this, it kind of bends around the corner a little bit, and that leaves what you see here, which is kind of a fuzzy edge to that shadow. Again, diffraction, that's what that looks like. I know there's a lot of words here that sound similar: reflection, refraction, and diffraction. Fortunately, you already know one of those words, reflection. You're very familiar with that. So you're just going to have to kind of piece these words out here and understand the differences between them. So reflection is light bouncing off of something. Diffraction is when light gets bent as it goes through different mediums. And diffraction is when light is bent when it goes around the corner or through an opening. All right, let's talk about a couple of more things here. It's kind of a cool animation. This is actually a type of artwork known as light painting. You can look this up on the internet. There's a lot of people that do this. It's pretty cool. All right, so one of the things that we need to talk about is fiber optics. You may have heard of fiber optics. If you have Fios by Verizon for your internet and your cable, then you use fiber optics. We use fiber optics a lot. This is basically what fiber optics look like, and we'll learn more about this in class and how they're made and stuff like that. But these are basically glass tubes. And what you do is you shine light in one end of them, and the light kind of bounces around inside of the tube, and it bounces back and forth. Bounces back and forth, bounces back and forth, bouncing off of the edges here. So what do you think? Is this reflection or refraction? If it's bouncing off like this, bouncing off of the inside surface of the tube, bouncing off, bouncing off, bouncing off until it finally comes out the other end, that is reflection. And because it's inside of the tube, we call it internal reflection. So these work by internal reflection, and all they do is send a little bit of light through this tube. And computers kind of work by on and off, ones and zeros. And so if you shine light, that's like an on signal for the computer. And if you're not shining a light, then it's kind of an off signal. And so you can kind of send a bunch of light and non-light in patterns to give signals and information to your computer. So this is a fiber optic cable, and you can see the internally reflected beam here. And so just make sure you fill in all of the blanks in your notes for that and kind of look at this for a moment and understand what's going on there. But that's how fiber optics work. Next thing we want to talk about, we'll be using these in class quite a bit, are lasers. And lasers stand for light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation. Wow, that's a mouthful. Good thing we shortened it to laser. But basically, we have light, you know what that word means. Amplification, that means we kind of make it stronger, brighter, bigger. And it's stimulated by the emission of radiation. And you guys should know what radiation is. But basically what this means, not to make this too complicated, but basically what this means is we get the we give the atoms in something some energy, and that stimulates them to kind of release some energy in the form of visible light, and we focus all that energy into a very narrow beam here. All right, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Our unit on light. We'll be doing a lot of stuff with this in class, and please remember that we will have a practical exam on this where you'll actually have to demonstrate and answer questions on a lot of the labs and activities we do. So make sure you know all of these examples that I gave you in this lesson and in class, because you will have to know those. So we mainly talked about refraction in this lesson, and that is when light is bent when it goes through different media. and this has to do with lenses. Remember, reflection has to do with mirrors, refraction has to do with lenses. We also have prisms, and this is where we break up white light into its separate colors due to different wavelengths. We have convex lenses, create converging rays with a focal point, very important, and we'll talk about the images that are created because of that in class. We have concave lenses, which create diverging rays that go apart from each other and have no focal point, so the rays of light do not cross over each other, and that's really important to remember. We have diffraction, waves bend around corners. This causes sunlight to look like it's going through branches, like I showed you, and it also shows fuzzy edges. It causes fuzzy edges of shadows. That's something that you'll definitely need to know for that test. We talked about fiber optics and how light is transmitted through a thin glass tube because of internal reflection. And we talked about lasers. Lasers are something where we stimulate atoms to release concentrated light energy, and we'll talk about this more in class, and I'll see you then.